Your palette is a collection of words, and the most important ones are God's words directly in the text. We are back with Teach Through the Word, the podcast for Bible teachers. Kris Langham with you again, and Peyton Jones smiling and red-faced. How you doing over there?
If they only knew what happens behind the mic.
I know, and I have it recorded.
Jonathan knows. I promise you all, it was almost entirely appropriate. Okay, I can't say that. I got to speak the truth. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't fitting for the podcast.
No, and just remember, it's complaints.chrislangham@throughtheword.org. They go straight to him.
Yes, indeed. But they don't even hear any of it. They have nothing to complain about. All right, I promise we'll be good. And we've been good. Guys, this is episode 5 in our basic training series. We're finishing out the week, and today you get a little homework to take with you. Our basic training this week has been all about the heart of teaching. And today we dig into the Preacher's Toolbox. Preacher's Toolbox number 1 is the art of wordcraft. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited about this. I love words. I love the craft of words. This is my medium that I like to work in. So that's what we're going to talk about today. How you feeling about it, Peyton? What do you think of wordcraft?
You know, I'm like you. You and I geek out on this stuff all the time, but I also have the privilege of seeing your notes, and I am super excited to hear you go off on this.
Nice. And speaking of which, if it seems like I'm doing most of the teaching in the basic training series, it's because this is actually a condensed version of a series that I've taught through many times as I train Bible teachers, and one that we're going to be recording at some point soon, hopefully, basic training for Bible teachers. So we're giving you some of the highlights of that series here, and we're going to make the full series available soon. So this is your place to get equipped, get trained, and while you're at it, get a behind-the-scenes look here at Through the Word, because we are here to equip you, Bible teacher, to do what you do better, together with you to elevate the craft of Bible teaching. Speaking of which, Wordcraft. So here's where we're going to start this one. Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 9. At this summary section of Ecclesiastes, looking back, this is sort of a reflection on what the writer of Ecclesiastes has just done. Not only was the teacher wise, but he also imparted knowledge to the people. He pondered and searched out and set in order many proverbs. The teacher searched to find just the right words, and what he wrote was upright and true. The words of the wise are like goads, their collected sayings like firmly embedded nails, given by one shepherd. I love this here. It says that the teacher, not only did he have knowledge in his head, not only was he wise, but he gave that knowledge to other people. One of the things I've noticed very often with folks who teach, sometimes a person is put in a role of teaching, not because they're good at teaching, but because they are just simply smart. And certainly if they know this stuff, that will just rub off. Certainly they can teach it, but knowing the topic and knowing how to teach it are two separate things. There is a craft to teaching. And it says here that the teacher searched to find just the right words. That working with words, that is our craft. Have you ever wondered at the power and magic of words? Words have meaning, but they also carry feeling. Words have memories attached to them. They have association and a certain unique beauty that nothing else in the world has. Words are powerful. Words also carry messages from our Creator to us. God has chosen this medium of words. So, teacher, words are the essential tool of your craft. Really, they are your medium. They are your clay, your painter's palette. Just as Bob Ross tells you to begin by setting out your palette with cadmium yellow, titanium white, sap green, your palette is a collection of words, and the most important ones are God's words directly in the text. In many ways, you are setting God's words, the verses and passages in front of you, you are setting those onto your painter's palette, and you are using those to paint a picture, but the picture has to be God's message from the text. So learn to use words with skill. To teach the word of God, you must learn to love the art of wordcraft. It doesn't mean you have to be eloquent and poetic necessarily. Poetry and eloquence and everything that you may have not wanted to pay attention in English class. I have to admit, I didn't love English class at all. It was not my jam. I kind of got tired of dissecting books that otherwise had a fantastic plot and characters, and we just tore them apart. But looking back, I really appreciate Mrs. Peterson's 9th grade English class. Shout out, Mrs. Peterson. You did a good job. I really appreciated the stuff I learned from those teachers because I learned how to convey a message using the art of words. So we're gonna pick that apart, and we're gonna do that partly by looking back on a couple of my messages earlier this week, especially yesterday when we were in Nehemiah chapter 8, to see what did I do there that was effective. Okay, one of the things that I did, I explained the word explain, and as ironic and funny as that is, it was also powerful. Why did I do that? Well, when a word in the text is the key word of my message, I want my listener to spend time there. I want their mind to dwell on it. Sometimes I explain something that's already obvious. For example, the word explain. There's not a listener out there who knows English who isn't familiar with the word explain. Why did I bother to stop and explain the word explain? Because I wanted it to dwell in the mind and I wanted it to spring to life. So I pulled it apart and explained explain, outwardly plain. Well, that does something. Suddenly you have a visual image of this word and it impacts you. I did the same thing with understand. With understand, I spent even more time. I said stand in the midst, and then I walked through a whole story of my time in Mississippi where I was in the midst of what I thought was the junkyard. I recognized it was houses. All of that paints a picture of the mind, and then I brought it back. Why did I spend so much time to explain a word that everybody already knows? Because the word understand was essential to that story, to that teaching in the text. So I dwelt there. That was wordcraft. That was taking a word and crafting, not something to go off into some weird direction with it, not something just to be interesting and fascinating, to tell stories just to entertain you. It wasn't about that. It was always about enlightening the text itself, of opening up and expositing the text itself. So what are some essential tools of working with words? Well, as you begin, it starts with the words of the Bible text. You don't just start out like, oh, I got a great word that I'm going to open up here. No, you're in the Bible text. You start with finding the meaning in the text. And then as you go through, a lot of times that meaning really starts to come to light when you see word repetition, or you see one phrase, like we were talking about in Titus when Peyton found that one verse, like, this one verse is what the whole section here, this whole letter is all about. It opens up the whole thing. So when I'm teaching that, I got to stop there. I'm going to pick out those key words from that text. As I pick out those key words, there's a few go-to methodologies that I always use. One is a word study. You can follow that word, track it using a concordance throughout the Bible. Where else does God use this word? Do some other verses that use this same word, will they open it up for me? Another key tool, word definition. Word definition, it just lets you camp there. Even if you know the word, letting you camp there and kind of look at it from other angles. Sometimes I will use the Hebrew or Greek more often. I want to dig into what the Bible word was and get the original and go dig into that. But you saw with explain and understand, I actually just went with English definition there. Not because it got you more of the original text, but it just let your brain dwell there and get a picture there of what it's all about. One of my favorites here, I did this in Ecclesiastes. Keyword in Ecclesiastes is meaningless in the NIV, or vanity in the King James. And I realized, okay, this is key. I know what that means, but I want to dwell there. I want to open it up. So I went to the Bible text, or the Bible dictionary, found the word. It is Hebel. And as I looked there, Hebel, there is a Bible dictionary entry right above it for Hebel. And I thought, why are there two words for Hebel? Because one was a word used that's repeated. The other was the name. It's the name Abel. And I looked at that and I said, why did Adam and Eve name their son meaningless or vanity? And suddenly it opened up to me. I don't think they did name their son that. I think they named him Hebel. And over time, if you remember, Abel was the first person recorded to die. And I believe over time, his name became synonymous with vanity. It doesn't last. Life is fleeting. And all of that meaning suddenly informed the text for me in Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes that focuses on life that doesn't last and that death that always looms large in the text. So digging into the meaning really opened up the text of Ecclesiastes for me. A few keys is you explain words. One, do not explain big words with bigger words. This is a teacher's classic mistake. You'll find this in biology class. I was tutoring a kid through biology, and all the explanations of words were using bigger words that the kid didn't understand. That will do you no good. Also, why does word definition help the hearer so much? Because it's that focus time. It lets them dwell and understand. It allows their mind to sit there for a while. Every time you're teaching the word, you've got to remember that you have had all week to do this, maybe even longer, but they are just starting on it. So you got to give them a moment to dwell in the text. And so I'll always say something like, okay, look down at the word vanity. Focus on that for a second and let's dwell there. Let's focus there. One of my key goals as a Bible teacher is I want their eyes on the word and their ears on the teacher. Eyes on the word. I'm always directing their eyes back to the text. Take a look at. I'm using phrases like, okay, let's dig in. Look back in verse 7. See that word there? What's the thing? And I'll ask them the word. What's the word and the first word in the sentence there? What? And I'm looking for them to get their eyes on the word. Another tool that I've shared in the past, one of my favorite Bible reference guides, Kenneth Wiest. His word studies, one of my favorite commentaries. They're not intended to really be a commentary. They're actually just word definitions, digging into the Greek of the New Testament. So good. So many times I found great material that opens it up for me and great ways for me to bring light to the text. Synonyms and antonyms are very helpful. A lot of times you can help somebody understand a word by just using your thesaurus and say, other words for this or other ways this word is translated in the Bible. And so often I'll use an antonym. When I use the word for sound doctrine, I opened it up by explaining what it's not. It's not corrupt. And I explain corrupt, and then I balance that out. I do that with vanity. I balance it out with glory. Glory is the Bible opposite. So sometimes when I get to the word glory, I'll say, well, here's what glory isn't: vanity. And the whole book of Ecclesiastes then opens up to tell me what glory is not. Glory means weighty. Vanity means like a breath or fleeting. Those antonyms kind of help the brain to balance out left and right. Okay, I'm seeing this from two sides. So synonyms, antonyms, word pictures, just what I did with understand. If you can take a word and open up a picture with it, when you can do something graphic with that text. So with that, the art of the word picture. The word picture is all about bringing understanding, just like I did with the word understand. You want to connect the meaning of God's word with the mind of the listener. You want to give them a concept that they can grasp to get some depth out of that word. So what I did with explain, outwardly plain, understand, to stand in the midst. When I teach holiness, I always teach the balance there in Leviticus of knowing the holy from the common. Holy, I will usually define by bringing out an object like a piece of fine china. Holy means set apart. And I give them some time to think about things that we set apart in our house for a special use. And then I'll bring out a mug, an old common mug to separate the holy from the common. That word picture paints something in their mind so that they can hear it. So how do you go about that? How do you go about finding a word picture? Well, first, you don't just do it with any old word in the text like, oh, that's an interesting word. You find a key word in the passage that's central to understanding that passage. I look up the definition. Start there. I'll look it up in Hebrew or Greek. I'll look up in English. Do I get something interesting there that can bring it to life? I'll ponder over that word. What is that like? What can I connect that to? I want to paint it in my own mind. And then I want to describe that painting that I see from that word. I'll contrast it. What is the opposite of this word? If it helps, use an object lesson. I always have a go-to. People will always, most comments I get most of anything, the people come back years later and says, I remember that time you taught on, it's the object lessons. So I'm always asking myself, whatever the concept, could I use an object? When I got to sound doctrine and I was explaining what sound means, and I started out by like painting this picture of rotten wood, I thought to myself, why not just bring rotten wood? This will be so much more powerful. I remembered my gate was falling apart, so I grabbed a piece and I've held it ever since. Every time I teach about what sound doctrine is, I grab that piece of wood and I bring that into the study. All right, guys, that is the magic of words. That is Wordcraft, but I want to move on and give you a homework assignment. All right, Peyton, you ready for this? Ready for some homework? I have to tell you, every time I give homework, there's a little sense of guilt inside because there's nothing I hated more in my growing years than homework. Homework was the bane of my existence. But I love homework that actually helps me to do something good. And you're really not going to grow as a preacher without some homework. So your homework this time is to pick one verse and explain it in 2 minutes. Pick one verse and explain it in 2 minutes. You can pick your favorite verse, pick a verse that you know really well, pick a verse that you've taught through before, pick a great verse. And if you're working with some others, if you've got a mentor guiding you through this, then mentor, you can assign the verses if you like, but I'm going to leave that up to you. My assignment to you is to explain that verse in 2 minutes. Now, the first time I assigned this to my very first class of basic training, all my guys came back with 2 minutes of preaching. They wanted to deliver a message with heart, with all the fullness of story and everything that goes into preaching, but that wasn't my assignment. So I actually failed them all on that one. I made them all redo it. Do not attempt to preach this verse in fullness. Just give me a 2 minute that would be a segment of your preaching and just explain what it says. I force you to do that because so often the preacher skips that step, and that is your first and primary step. So many times I'll hear a teacher read the text and assume we all know what that just said and move right off into application. First, you have to explain what it says. So here's how you're going to go about it, explaining one verse. First, as you prepare yourself for this, read it for yourself. Second, I encourage you to rephrase it. Just rewrite it in your own thoughts and words. As you rephrase it, pick out a key word, a phrase that like, this is the focus. This is the emphasis of this verse, such as when, if the verse is be strong in the Lord. Well, the word strong is clearly important there. So emphasize the word strong. You might also emphasize in the Lord, but the focus of that is be strong. So look up strength. Look up what it is in Hebrew or Greek. That would be New Testament. Look up strength, the history of strength in English. Where does the word strength come from? Is there anything interesting there that opens up the text? Look up other verses that have the word strength. Pick the key word or phrase and get creative in how you explain it. Definition, word picture, etc. And then once you've done that, put that word back into the verse to see how the parts of the verse connect together and explain the full text of it. That's your homework, guys. That's what you're going to do from here. That actually finishes out this series of basic training. We're going to come back next time with another Bible book. I believe up next will be the book of Colossians. But I want to finish this out by reminding you in Ecclesiastes 12:10, the teacher searched to find just the right words, and what he wrote was upright and true. The words of the wise are like goads, their collected sayings like firmly embedded nails, given by one shepherd. That does it for our basic training series number 1. Thanks for joining us for Teach Through the Word, the podcast for Bible teachers. Next time, we will jump back into a Bible book. The book of Colossians is coming up next. Each week here at Teach Through the Word, we'll bring you one Bible book, one basic training, or one guest teacher interview as we equip you, Bible teacher, to do what you do better and together with you to elevate the craft of Bible teaching. Peyton Jones, Jonathan Ferguson, thanks so much for joining this week. And the rest of you, have a great week. We'll see you next time.